I've covered many stories on why a certain athlete was heading towards bankruptcy or financial trouble based on their current behavior. I figured this story would provide a slightly different twist, a quarterback who invested his money and lost it all. This is Mark Brunell, who was a quarterback in the NFL for 19 seasons, was a Super Bowl champion, 3-time Pro Bowler, and led the NFL in passing yards in 1996. He had a massively successful football career, but unfortunately fell on hard times off the field during his playing days. He's too trusting, and that's a weakness. How NFL star Mark Brunell blew his entire $50 million fortune in failed business investments. I remember watching Mark Brunell carry the not historically great Jaguars franchise to a 14-2 record in 1999, so seeing the headline recently that he lost $50 million shocked me. You don't generally hear about quarterbacks going broke because they have to be very cerebral and analytical to play the position, which usually plays well off the field too. Personal guarantees of numerous business loans contributed to National Football League quarterback Mark Brunell's Chapter 11 filing. Since this is a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, we'll be able to see all of Mark's assets and liabilities. I find personal finance and investing fascinating, so hopefully you enjoyed this deep dive as much as I did. While Brunell earned more than $50 million in his NFL career, including $1.6 million for throwing 30 passes for the New Orleans Saints last year, a string of failed real estate investments caused the 3-time Pro Bowler's financial woes. This story hit home for me because you generally don't think about an athlete going broke because they bought real estate, but once you hear the full story, it'll make a little more sense. For a guy that had his prime before the massive quarterback contracts, it's pretty impressive that Mark made $70.6 million in total contract money over his playing career. What a lot of people don't consider with athletes is where they earn their money. Playing in the AFC South is super advantageous. Mark played in Jacksonville, Florida, so half of his game checks had zero state income tax. Nowadays, Jaguar players have it made. Florida, no state income tax. The Texans are in Houston, Texas, no state income tax. And they also have the Titans in Nashville, Tennessee, no state income tax. Here's the bankruptcy document filed in June 2010. His estimated assets were between $1 million to $10 million, and his estimated liabilities were between $10 million and $50 million. We'll see the exact numbers in just a minute. Here's the list of the top 20 creditors. The first one listed is a $2.6 million loan to American Bank, which is from 2 personal guarantees for business loans. There's an American Express credit card of $18,000, a business lease of $220,000 for a building in Georgia, and about $400,000 from personal guarantees of business lines of credit for Champion LLC. Lastly, a commercial loan of nearly $2.3 million. Here's the second page listing out more loans. $1.4 million commercial loan. The loans are pretty sizable. $450,000, $220,000, $2.1 million, $132,000, almost $1 million. And look at this massive loan of $5.5 million. For some context, the bankruptcy was filed in 2010. The United States was facing a massive recession, and people who were illiquid real estate investors got smashed. Brunell lost millions on Whataburger and went bankrupt. I still haven't seen exactly how he lost money in Whataburger Investments. It's possible that it was development deals for Whataburger, but haven't verified that. Like many athletes, Mark Brunell invested his NFL millions in a number of businesses. Along with 2 former teammates, he started a company called Champion LLC in order to get into the real estate game. However, when the housing market crashed, he lost all $11 million that he invested and defaulted on a number of loans. According to this CheeseheadTV.com article, the 2 teammates were Todd Fordham and Joel Smeenge. Here's the final page showing another large loan of $3.4 million, and the others total about $1.5 million combined. At that time, I imagine getting tens of millions of dollars in loans was super easy for a starting quarterback in the NFL with millions of dollars in income still flowing in. Here's the chart to give you a visual on his assets and liabilities. He had a little over $5.5 million in assets and nearly $25 million in liabilities. The loans that present problems are going to be unsecured, shown in row F, which is over $21 million total. If I'm reading this correctly, 84% of his liabilities were unsecured loans. This is just the chart, but the reason why it matters is you're going to be paying a lot more for unsecured lines of credit or loans because they aren't backed by anything. In Mark's case, they appear to be loans tied to developmental real estate with personal guarantees. That was a dangerous game to play. We've seen his debt, now we'll see what he owns. Almost $3.6 million of ownership on this page, which represents equity in real property. Here's the house he owned many years ago where he had $3.1 million in equity. Looks beautiful, and I wouldn't mind having one of those sometime in the future. This page is displaying his equity in personal property. I find the Schedule B document to be fascinating. Wealthy people very rarely talk about all they own or how much cash they hold on to. Here was a multi-million-dollar a year quarterback showing exactly what he owns. He had a little bit of cash, $228,000 on this page if you count the $15,000 worth of furniture. It mentioned that's in storage. It's a lot of furniture put in a storage closet. Here's the second page, which adds up everything in his house, which I think is kind of funny. What's unfortunate is that he had to tally up what his 1991 National Championship ring, his 3 Rose Bowl rings, and in the 2010 Super Bowl ring was worth. They were only given a value of $15,500. Man, what a slap in the face with that because of how much sentimental value those items hold. This also shows $363,000 in the NFL player annuity program and $627,000 in the NFL player 401k plan. The NFL player annuity program provides eligible players with additional retirement savings. These players earn so much money that it's almost sad that you feel like many of them actually need a forced retirement account after earning millions of dollars. For those curious, here's the input chart where you'll see how much each player earns, which is based on their number of qualified seasons. Once you play 5 or more years, you start earning a pretty legitimate amount each year of $45,000. Here is the value of his partnerships and businesses, which they value at $285,000. My guess is that Third Street Property Holdings LLC had rental property and wasn't a development deal with a bad loan. He would have been really struggling financially at this time, and this company, KJC Auto Title Loan Corp., owed him $300,000. We'll learn more about them in a minute. I've been owed money before, but never $300,000 worth. That had to be aggravating for Mark waiting on his money. Lastly, they list his 3 vehicles, which only totaled $45,000. What's unfortunate about Mark is it didn't seem like he fell victim to the trap most athletes do, which is expensive cars, multiple properties to hold as second or third homes, and spending recklessly on a personal level. He owned an old Jeep, an SUV, and a truck. With hindsight being 2020, it sounds like he was a little reckless with his business spending. I say it all the time, the biggest reason any of these guys go broke is because they build a life full of liabilities that far outweigh their assets. $25 million in liabilities and personal guarantees for lines of credit against $5 million in assets is a pretty good example. This page listed Mark's current income at the time of only $8,780 combined between him and his wife. They list 4 kids above, and they live in a multi-million-dollar beach house. $8,700 a month in household income is a great life to live for sure, but that's not enough when you have a huge mortgage, kids, and private schools. Here's a list of Mark's expenses, which lists a monthly net income of minus $16,000 because of almost $25,000 a month in personal expenses. That number doesn't even include any business debt. This dude was operating at a $200,000 a year loss in his personal expenses. I'm including this page to show all the businesses he had started for real estate and various enterprises. I always root on success when people are investing in real estate. Mark just happened to get caught doing development deals in arguably the worst time ever to do them and lost his shirt. The one thing I can't wrap my head around is a quarterback with this much money taking on a risky venture. Once you're rich, you don't have to get rich again. I don't think it's smart for these guys to invest in real estate development deals at any point of the market cycle because there's no cash flow. Way too much risk to make money they don't exactly need. I did come across this ESPN article titled Records, NFL Players' Investments Funded Controversial High-Interest Loans. Investments from at least 15 current and former NFL players, including Mark Brunell, were used in a complex investment program designed to profit at the expense of low-income borrowers, according to civil and bankruptcy court documents obtained by ESPN. I am very much not a fan of these loans because of how the system is basically designed to screw people who are desperate and typically not fully aware of the terms of the loans. From 2011 to 2014, at least $6 million linked to NFL players funding KJC Auto's title loans. Records show the company had returns up to 22% on capital it provided to KJC Auto. If you remember the promissory note from earlier owed to Mark Brunell from KJC Auto, it was from this predatory lending company. This is a really interesting article that I'd recommend reading if you want to gain some insight into how some investments operate within NFL circles. This paragraph details how Hall of Famer Derek Brooks linked up with a California attorney who guided the investment in the predatory lending business. I talked to someone recently who manages the finances of a couple of high-profile players, possibly people I've made videos on, and he mentioned that there's a really ugly lending side to the athlete business and money managers that appear out of nowhere and send the money to someone they know and poof, before you know it, the money's gone. January 2021, Detroit Lions hire former Jaguars quarterback Mark Brunell as assistant. This story has a positive ending as Mark Brunell is now the Detroit Lions quarterback coach. It looks like he was able to move on from the bankruptcy and turn his life around. I wanted to make this video to show a different side of athletes going broke since Mark did it by investing in real estate, which is something I preach, except I recommend buying cash flow rental property cash at that income level and not high interest loan development deals. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.